This first lecture starts on Easter Island. Easter Island is one of the most isolated inhabited islands in the world, being over 2,000 kilometers away from its closest neighbor, the Pitcairn Islands. By the time of the European arrival in 1722, the island had no trees, a poor population of about 3,000 people, and a few hundred moai statues scattered along the coastline. The famous statues, each carved from a single massive stone, were puzzling to the European discoverers, because the islanders that were met by the Europeans seemed unable to support an artisan class, let alone move the monolithic statues of up to 86 tons. The mystery of the moai statues invited some wild origin stories over the years, with some speculating that they were remnants from a civilization of the mythical sunk continent Atlantis, or even that they were extraterrestrial. But perhaps the most plausible explanation is that the statues were created before Easter Island's population collapsed. As told by Brander and Taylor in their 1998 American Economic Review article on page 121, recently discovered evidence suggests that Easter Island was first settled by a small group of Polynesians about or shortly after 400 AD. The pollen record obtained from core samples and dated with carbon dating methods shows that the island supported a great palm forest at this time. This discovery was a major surprise given the treeless nature of the island at the time of first European contact. Noticeable forest reduction is evident in the pollen record by about 900 AD. By about 1400, the palm forest was entirely gone. The population probably peaked at about 10,000 sometime around 1400 AD and then began to decline. Not long thereafter, the island's first weapons appear in archaeological records. Carving had apparently ceased by 1500. About this time, a new tool called a mata enters the archaeological record. This tool resembles a spearhead or a dagger and is almost certainly a weapon. The grim history of the Easter Island can be explained with a theory that was introduced by Malthus in 1798. He is perhaps the most debated economist of all time, as can be seen from some headlines reading 7 billion reasons why Malthus was wrong, Malthus the false prophet, new limits to growth revive Malthusian fears, and the last is the limits why Malthus was wrong and why environmentalists should care, is the title of a recent book by Callis, a leading scholar in the degrowth movement. I will read some quotes from this work later. In his essay on the principle of population, Malthus describes that population, when unchecked, increases in a geometrical ratio that is exponential. For example, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. Subsistence increases in an arithmetical ratio that is linear. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A slight acquaintance with numbers will show the immensity of the first power in comparison of the second. Brander and Taylor translate this for us, as Malthus argued that increases in real income arising from productivity improvements or other sources would tend to cause population growth, leading to the erosion and perhaps full dissipation of income gains. He also suggested that population growth might overshoot productivity gains, causing subsequent painful readjustment. Malthus warns that if population is not kept under control with preventive measures, lowering birth rates, the population will outgrow the carrying capacity of its environment and collapse through higher death rates. The latter mechanism is also known as the Malthusian catastrophe. Brander and Taylor continue. Malthus was not a fatalist. He believed that enlightened public policy could reduce population growth, contemplating both contraception and moral restraint as mitigating factors. Malthus's theory led the UK to keep census data through the British Census Act of 1800 and is said to have influenced both Darwin and Russell Wallace, the pioneers of evolutionary biology. However, more recently, Malthus seems to have fallen from grace in mainstream economics. Critics point out that the assumption of linear growth in food production is flawed and that the assumption that the population increases exponentially does not hold as countries get richer. Indeed, countries with higher incomes have lower birth rates, and during the last 2 centuries, food production has grown faster than the population, although not without adverse effects. For example, claiming more land for agriculture, fertilizer and pesticide use, industrial fishing all contribute to the loss of biodiversity. In explaining Malthus's theory, I use the concept of the carrying capacity of an environment. Even though the term may not be attributed to Malthus directly, it is in line with the spirit of his theory. Verhulst introduced the concept mathematically in his Notice sur la loi que la population suit dans son accroissement, or Essay on the Law that Population Follows in Its Growth. And Sayre traces back the first use of the term carrying capacity to a report by the US Secretary of State in 1845. Let us consider Verhulst his formula for a moment, where the change of population over time, noted here as dn over dt, is equal to some positive constant rate r times the size of the population times 1 minus n over k. Here k is the mathematical expression for the carrying capacity. When the population is smaller than the carrying capacity, that is n over k is smaller than 1, meaning that the total term is positive and that the population grows. As the population approaches the carrying capacity, growth slows down and ceases as soon as the population has reached its maximum size given the carrying capacity. Yet there is little that guarantees a smooth path as depicted here. It is also possible that the population overshoots the carrying capacity, readjusts and overshoots again, etc. And the history of the Easter Island suggests that when a population overshoots the carrying capacity of the environment, it may irreversibly reduce